Well, welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be looking a little bit more in depth at Chapter 9, which deals with communication, and today we're going to be looking at listening. Now, just as communicating as a sender to a receiver is important, so too is a receiver from a sender important. As we start to look at the dynamics of listening, how many times have you misunderstood someone? How many times have you misinterpreted what someone said? It happens to us all the time. And the reason why is that there's a breakdown. There's either a breakdown from the sender to the receiver or from the receiver trying to assimilate and decode all of the things that the sender is sending. So today, let's take a look at the process of listening. Well, welcome back, everybody. Today we're in Chapter 9 again, and we're going to continue on with leadership communication. Now, yesterday we looked at some of the basic foundations of leadership communication, the process of communication, noise, and so forth. But when it comes to leadership, from a practical sense, the question that you really need to understand as far as the difference between leadership and the old and new styles of leadership is the questions that leaders ask. For instance, a leader-centered individual will ask questions to seek information, to inform the leader about what is going on in the organization. They investigate issues, problems, or opportunities. They gather information, ideas, or insights. These are strategies so that the leader can become the best informed about whatever situation that may be going on within that company or within their responsibility. Now, you also have follower-centered questions, and these questions the leader will ask to seek to connect with followers, trying to gain more insight to that follower or the individual's perspective on things. They encourage critical thinking. They're not the ones who will assume responsibility for coming to answers. They will delegate that, and they want to encourage the workers to think critically about what it is that they're doing or the situation that they're facing. For instance, if a worker came up to you and said they're having difficulties on the production line, or that some of their sales may be off, instead of you running to try to figure out what's going on solely, you're going to solicit the input of other people to try to help in solving whatever dilemma that you have. And in this case, it would be one of those two issues. So encouraging insight and critical thinking is a follower-centered type of perspective. It does expand people's awareness about their role in the organization, how important their role is, and it also stimulates learning. And today we have the phenomenon of learning organizations, and learning organizations seek to invest in the individual worker to leverage his or her really skills, knowledge, abilities, and expand on those so that the person can become more of an asset to the organization. Now, the benefits of asking questions, and much of this follows the last slide, it encourages people to think and find answers. You can't be, as the leader, you can't be the go-to person for everything. People will come to you for direction and so forth, but if you teach the people how to learn and find answers, then that is going to not only develop them, but it's going to free you up as well. Now, there's something that we teach in organizational learning and behavior and so forth, and that's called single, double, and deutero loop learning. Single loop learning is just fixing the problem. Let's say, for instance, your light bulb goes out at home. What do? Well, you replace the light bulb. You don't give it much thought. But if it keeps going out regularly and quite frequently, then you might want to incorporate double loop learning, and that is to go back and look for cause and effect relationships. Why is this light bulb not coming on? So you'll backtrack and you may discover there may be something wrong with the wiring. So you would fix the wiring, and as a result, that's going to fix the problem of the light bulb going out. Now, when you get into the habit of double loop learning, that means when you start looking at everything as having a cause and effect relationship, when people come to you and or you have problems in the organization, you're not looking just to put a Band-Aid on the problem. You want to go back and remedy the disease or the issue. So training your people to think like that, not just to come to you for problems, not to just fix the immediate issue, but to go back and look at cause and effect relationships. That's teaching them to learn to live and face issues from that type of perspective, and that's deutero-loop learning. Deutero-loop learning is learning how to learn about that type of learning. So it encourages people. When you are asking questions, you're seeking to find or encourage them to think and find answers on their own. And when you start thinking in that way, and when they start thinking that way, you become a whole lot more productive. It builds positive attitudes and follower self-confidence. When you show them that you believe in them, that you're putting your confidence in them to be able to come to solutions, that makes them feel better about themselves, about their work, and who they are in that organization. It provokes critical thought and leads to deeper, more lasting learning, and that's, again, that deutero-loop learning. It shows concern for individuals. It develops new insights, critical thinking, awareness, and learning. So all of the things that we saw in the last slide, this is really the benefit of really what we're trying to incorporate in learning organizations today. Now, listening. Listening is the skill of grasping and interpreting a message's genuine meaning. Listening is a skill, and it's something that many of us have to learn. We are people who like to talk. We are people who are vocal. We don't have much patience. We are often filled with biases and so forth. So listening is kind of a challenge for many people. And you've probably been accused time and time again of not listening, or you didn't hear me, or whatever. And oftentimes that's true. I know if I'm engaged in something, I'm usually focused on that thing, and it's hard for me to distract myself from that to listen to other things. You may have biases. If you remember back when yesterday when we talked about the learning or the listening and the communication process, we looked at the concept of noise. And noise is everything that filters out that message or prevents that message from being received. You may be a big sports fan, and on Sundays you may be watching a game and your spouse is trying to talk to you. Well, you're not going to be listening to that person. So there's all types of noise there that will prevent the person from receiving the intended message and so forth. So listening is the skill of grasping and interpreting a message's genuine meaning, not what you interpret it to be, but what it actually is. Now, keys to effective listening, these are pretty straightforward. Listen actively. That means focus on the sender or the message that's being sent. Keep an open mind. Oftentimes our biases and stereotypes keep us from that. So we have to be careful when we are receiving information that we keep an open mind to it. Resist distractions. Again, it may mean turning off the television. It may be taking yourself away from what you're currently doing. It may be clearing your mind or whatever, but you want to resist distractions. One of the challenges that I had in one school is the place where the class was located. It was located down in the basement across from the boiler room, and every 15 minutes that equipment would start going off, and making all kinds of noise, and that was a distraction. So I had to work around all of that. But there are all types of distractions, even the state of your mental state at that point. Early in the morning, some people are not good at doing much of anything. They're just trying to get going. Some people, they're really active in the middle of the day or in the afternoon. Some, the opposite is true. So even your mental state, whether you're tired or frustrated or whatever, those can be distractions. Capitalize on thought being faster than speech. Try to really grasp what's being said. Think about what is being said. A lot of times we talk before we think, and I've gotten myself in trouble over that, especially in marriage. You say things that you wish you could take back, but think about what you're saying and listen as such too, and seek understanding. Oftentimes, especially today, when you're looking at the world, and especially here in our country, people are talking at each other. They're not talking with each other. And we're not trying to understand. We're trying to dominate the conversation. So these are all strategies that can help you be a better listener. And then you also try to not judge content, or judge content but not delivery. That's an important element to all of this, is you're not judging the person or how it's sent, but you're looking at the content. Hold your fire. Don't jump in there and start challenging or whatever until you listen and really have the opportunity to evaluate what's been said in its entirety. Listen for ideas. Work at listening and show respect. Today we have forgotten the art of respect and having a mutual concern for others and trying to get to truth instead of just trying to win an argument. So all of these are ways that we can be better listeners. Now, dialogue is the sharing, active sharing and listening, where people explore common ground and grow to understand each other and share a worldview. So dialogue is sitting down and giving you the chance to speak your mind, giving me the chance to speak my mind, and together we try to understand each other. The other way around is really conflict and unwarranted conflict, and that's just trying to win the battle or the debate, and you're really not seeking understanding. You just want to be able to have your way above everybody else's. Use dialogue to discuss hot topics. You know, the Bible says, "Come, let us reason together." And that is our strategy when it comes to witnessing, when it comes to business, when it comes to whatever controversy or conflict that we may have. We need to have a dialogue. You're not trying to, let's say, for instance, you're witnessing to someone. You're not trying to beat them over the head with a Schofield Bible. You're there to discuss what you believe as opposed to their belief, and let the reasoning and the dialogue allow that person to come to an understanding of who Jesus Christ is. But oftentimes today, well, you're a sinner, you're going to hell, and you don't let them get a word in edgewise, which I've been guilty of that. I was talking to a Jehovah's Witness not long ago, and I started to become, a little passionate when they were talking about the Bible doesn't say anything about heaven, or when you die, you just go into the ground. And I'm asking this person, where is your hope? So it is very easy to become emotional. It's very easy to get more into a conflict than it is to dialogue. But we're to refrain from trying to get into conflict and all of that. We're here to dialogue and to come to an understanding. Participants refrain from presuming to know the outcomes or trying to sell their convictions, and we're characterized by group unity, shared meaning, and transformed mindsets. So when people can get on the same page, when they share meanings, and sometimes when you are confronting people in dialogue, try to find things you have in common as the building blocks for the things that can lead up to the differences that we have. Now, Exhibit 9.5 just shows you the dialogue and discussion and the differences between that, so I'll let you guys take a look at it. Candor is the honest, forthright expression of a leader's thinking, not holding back, being transparent. Oftentimes we hide that because we don't want to maybe alarm the employees, or we don't want to reveal some of our weaknesses and so forth. But candor is telling the people what's on your mind based on fact, based on the situation, and based on the relationship. And hopefully you have an open relationship with your employees, and they see you as someone they can trust. And the more candor you display, the more they are going to trust you. Here are some of the principles of communicating with candor. It limits the potential for workplace misunderstanding, turning into hot topics. And today, because of technology, we have the internet, we have email, we have Snapchat and Twitter and all of these things. And it's very easy to, with all of the communication, and as fast as the communication is coming about, it's very easy to have people spread rumors that can be damaging to the company. So the more you're open and transparent, the less likelihood that will occur. It lets followers know where the leader stands and what the leader expects. Sometimes if the leader is obscure, if the leader is not out there interacting with the people, and it's you're behind closed doors all the time, that gives a lot of opportunity for employees to wonder and to think. And normally whenever the employees are starting to get restless, it's not because of anything they think is positive going on. It's because they let their imagination run wild, and it usually always ends up in a negative or from a negative supposition. So you want to be up front and let them know what's going on, what you expect of them, and that understanding can lead to better productivity. And as a result, again, they work faster and better, they get more involved, and it limits organizational problems such as misunderstandings and conflict and so forth. I've seen companies go into a lot of turmoil just because of misunderstandings and because management didn't communicate. So communicating with candor is essential. Stories. Stories are those things that involve the culture of the organization. You might, where you work, have stories of things that have gone on with other workers, or you may have some heroes of the organization who were influential in that organization. I know Walmart, they have stories about Sam Walton that go back to even before Walton became the CEO of Walmart, or before he built Walmart. But there are stories that people can share. It gives them a common sense of identity. I mean, we have the Bible, and look at the stories in the Bible that we can relate to, and it gives us a sense of understanding and direction and so forth. And from that, we have our beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors, just like we do in organizations. But, Peter said these are the things that we believe in. These are the ways that we should behave. Paul instructed in his letters to the churches how they should behave and so forth. And he'd given stories about how other churches were doing this or how people were doing that. It helps leaders to unite people. When people have a common sense, a purpose, an identity, chances are they're going to be closer. In my church, we talk about how we're a family. We're the family of God. We're a spiritual family. And it makes no difference if I go to India or if I go to Africa or whatever. When I see fellow believers, we have a unity there, a common ground and a common identity that we can build off of. So We can talk and enjoy each other just as like we've known each other for years. And stories help to do that as well. The stories that we preach are the same stories that they preach. So it gives us that unity. And it helps make sense of complex situations, especially when it comes to organizational unity and cohesion and being able to know what direction you're going in. Oftentimes, you can refer back to the mission statement, the stories, and so forth, and that will give you your sense of identity enough to know what decisions should be appropriate for that organization, especially when things get complex. Not everything is black and white. So stories help to give us an idea of which direction and what type of choices we need to make in certain situations. And it binds people together, as I said before, with a shared purpose, and it inspires people to action. Now, when it comes to communicating to persuade and influence, there's different types of communication out there. There's communication that informs, there's communication that entertains, and there's also communication that persuades and influences. A pastor, for instance, communicates to persuade and influence. A leader communicates to persuade and influence. So the process to be able to do that is to listen first. Know what's going on with your people. Know who you're dealing with. When I became pastor of Parkway Baptist, I wanted to find out what their concerns were. I wanted to know what was important to them so that I could establish some kind of common ground. And in doing so, I got to the next step, which was credibility. If you don't have credibility, it makes no difference what you say. The people are not going to listen to you. So you build goals on common ground. There were things at my church and in organizations where I've been in positions of leadership. You find common ground and you build off of that. You don't go in there and force people to do something that they don't want to do unless it's absolutely necessary. There are situations that call for that. But when you're trying to effect change, you want to be able to, first of all, gain their respect and trust. And then you want to build on common ground and then go from there. And it makes your position compelling to others. You have shared solutions or commitments. Oftentimes, when I wanted to change things in the church and in businesses, I would talk to them and we would discuss things, and I would lead them into questions that would highlight the benefits of the change that I was trying to bring about. I would let them discuss their concerns, and I would tell them how much they could benefit from what I was trying to incorporate. And once they saw the picture, by just sitting down and having that dialogue, they were more open to change. So there's going to be, as you see here, communication apprehension, level of anxiety associated with real or anticipated communication with another person. Whenever I would sit down with the church or individual members, I would try to picture myself already in that encounter, trying to think about the questions that they're going to ask and what they're going to be concerned about and how I'm going to respond. But some people have anxiety before they communicate with another person. I've done that quite often, especially when it comes to conflict. When I know that I'm about to have to address a worker or a person, I don't like that. Most people don't like conflict, but it's an unfortunate reality. And I would picture in my mind the dialogue that would go back and forth, back and forth. I'm going to say this, and then that person is probably going to say this, and then I'm going to respond like this. You rehearse, and you've got the whole thing finished before you even meet the person. But that's just a sign of anxiety that people have. You can reduce that with candor. You can reduce that with credibility. You can reduce that with building a common ground. Of course, there are going to be those no matter what you do. It makes no difference because they're going to resist everything that you do. But you can reduce it with most people by just doing those and following those principles. Oftentimes, as I said at the beginning of this week, we don't really think about everything that goes on when we are trying to communicate with others. Oftentimes, we just speak without understanding really that speaking and listening both are a process. So today we have a chance to take a look, or we did evaluate how listeners listen and the importance of that and the things that we can do to be more effective listeners. Well, tomorrow we're going to finish out this chapter as we look at the last few components of communication. But until then, have a good day, and we'll see you tomorrow.